Okay, so this is a story that's more based on UK politics than Jersey specifically, but I had to make a video on it because, firstly, I think the UK politics usually influences the Jersey, and we usually follow in their policy making. Secondly, I think it's just a hilarious argument made by this guy. So, this is Professor Ashton, who is the Chief of Public Health in the UK, and he is calling for the age of consent to be reduced to 15. As we all know, at the moment it currently stands at 16, and the Downing Street have come out and said point blank, no, it's not open for debate. It was made 16 to protect children, and that's the way it's going to stay. So why does Professor Ashton think that we should lower the age of consent to 15? Well, firstly, you need to know that the UK has some of the highest rates of teenage pregnancy in the developed world, matched only by that of America. Although that number has come down significantly from like the 1960s and 70s, it is still a massively high number, and it's a number that many governments have tried to solve and have failed. So here are Professor Ashton's reasons for wanting to drop the age of consent. Firstly, he says that we need to accept that a third of all boys and girls are already having sex at 14 or 15. Okay, if they are, why do we need to change the law? Since when is that how we make laws? You don't say, oh, most people are just robbing cars, so we'll just make that okay. Nonsense argument. Secondly, he says 15-year-olds would be able to get sexual health advice from the NHS. Right, okay, why can't they do that already? Why can't a 15-year-old already go to the NHS? Is there some sort of rule that says they have to be 16 to get sexual health advice? If so, just change that rule. That's all you need to do. Plus, there are plenty of other resources available to 15-year-olds, 14-year-olds, 13, however old you are, as long as you're under the age of 25, you can go to places like the Brook Centre or the Brook Organisation, whatever their full name is, and they have a wealth of resources with regards to sexual health advice, pregnancy, abortions, STIs, everything to do with that. You can get all that information. It's on the internet. They have clinics all over the UK. They have one in Jersey. That information is already available to 15-year-olds. So that's a nonsense argument. He also says that teachers and other adults that work with children would feel on a firmer footing advising 15-year-olds on sexual health advice. Well, again, just point them in the direction of Brook. If you don't know, if you haven't been trained to give advice, or you don't feel comfortable giving advice to a 15-year-old, point them in the direction of someone who does. Someone like Brook. They're on the internet, they're available, they're free. Also, even if you did lower the age of consent to 15, so that 15-year-olds could get advice from their teachers, wouldn't you just have the same problem with 14-year-olds? What about if a 14-year-old comes to you? Then what are you going to do? Lower the age of consent to 14 so they can advise 14-year-olds? Again, stupid argument. He also says that countries with lower ages of consent have lower teen birth rates. And I've looked into this, right? If you go on Wikipedia, there is mountains of information about this. And I can't see any correlation whatsoever between the ages of consent and teenage birth rates. The two lowest the lowest developed countries, or the highest developed countries with the lowest teenage birth rates, are Singapore and South Korea. Singapore has an age of consent of 16 and South Korea is 19. And they have the lowest teenage birth rate out of all of the Western developed countries. Italy and Germany have an age of consent of 14. And again, teenage birth is not a problem there. It's not anywhere near as big a problem as the UK. So you have ranging from ages of consent of 14 up to 19, and it doesn't correlate whatsoever with teenage birth rates. He also says that youngsters at the moment are getting strange expectations from watching strange expectations of their relationships from watching porn and the social media, etc. Well, okay, but let's assume that the films we watch, the programs we watch on TV, the music we listen to, the computer games we play, and what you read on Facebook and all that sort of thing is exactly the same that most of Europe is looking at, surely. I mean, we're not watching, most of the stuff we watch on TV is American anyway, so it's not like it's an English problem, and most of the world is watching American TV, so or listening to American music. I don't see how that's directly impacting teenage pregnancy. A report in 2002 found that around half of all conceptions to under 18s was concentrated among 30% of the most deprived population, with only 14% occurring among the 30% least deprived. So it's clear that not only is this a problem in the UK, but it's a problem in the more deprived areas of the UK. So what could possibly lead the more deprived areas to have higher teenage birth rates? Well, could it be the price of condoms, the price of other contraception? Could it be the lack of education? Do they not get the same sexual education in them lower deprived areas? Or could it be that there are welfare systems set up in the UK which actually benefit those in deprived areas if you have children? So if you're coming from a background where there's high unemployment and low education, and the government will actually pay for you to have accommodation, they'll give you a flat, they'll give you certain benefits and tax breaks and stuff like that if you have a child, are you not just saying to them people, actually, rather than struggle to find a job in these high unemployment areas, just have a kid and then you get it all for free? So I think my personal opinion is that plays a major role in the high teenage pregnancy rates. Also, in places like Italy and Spain and Germany, where the age of consent is lower, you also have a stigma attached to teenage pregnancy, and that cultural stigma plays a massive part in keeping teenage pregnancy to a minimum. In the UK, there isn't so much of a stigma in certain areas. It's quite accepted now that people have babies at sort of 15, 16, that sort of age. It's not unusual anymore. We don't go, oh my god, are you joking me, you're pregnant? And we don't think like that anymore. It's just like, oh right, okay, it's another teenage mum. And so there is no sort of cultural impact of having a child young. There is actual financial benefit in certain circumstances from having a child young. Surely these are the issues we need to look at, not the age of consent. By lowering the age of consent, all you're doing is saying that's actually now the age you're expected to be having sex, because at the moment most people expect that you should be having sex around the age of 16 because that's the age of consent. If you lower that, it just lowers the age everyone expects you to be having sex. Also, it says that now your sexual predators can legally aim for 15-year-olds and not get in trouble for it. So you're taking away that level of protection that we had on children. I think what needs to happen, rather than, when it comes to the age of consent, rather than lowering the age of consent, what we need to do is we need to say that there are margins of consent. And what I mean by that is, if you are the age of 15, for example, you can have sex with someone who is 3 years older than you or 4 years older than you. If you are 16, you can have sex with someone who is under the age of 21, and then above that you can do whatever you want. But there needs to be this sort of this margin where you can have sex with people who are possibly underage if you yourself are that age, because I think criminalizing young couples for having sex when we already have accepted there that a third of 14 and 15 year olds are already doing it. Well, let's say, okay, as long as you're doing it with other 14 and 15 year olds, that's fine. But it's when you get the older people coming in and having sex with 14 and 15 year olds, that's when we need to say, no, this is why this law exists, to stop you doing that. That's my thoughts on the subject. I don't think reducing the age of consent blanketly helps anyone at all. I think if you do want to lower the age of consent, you have to have a margin system like they do in many other countries. There's a lot of countries that have a much more complicated age of consent law. I don't think it will help bring down teenage pregnancies at all. I don't think it correlates at all. And certainly the research, the data I've looked at, there is no correlation. And quite frankly, I'm a bit appalled at this man coming out and saying this and actually supporting this idea. I think it's ridiculous. Anyway, as always, those are my thoughts. Don't know if you agree or disagree, but I would love to hear your comments and hear your thoughts on the subject. And as always, don't forget to share it, like it, subscribe it, Facebook, Twitter, and all that lovely stuff. And thanks for listening, guys.